how many of them are there on this planet, and what's the purpose? And once you see so many of them, it only makes sense to logically ask, are they like the humans' puppets? I guess I came to that conclusion. And are the humans their puppets? I guess I came to that conclusion for other reasons, but they're 2% of the population, but there's one for almost every one of you. And I've never really had like many white or black or Asian friends when I look back, or girlfriend and boyfriends. I definitely haven't had a 2% Rothschild girlfriend and friend proportion. Friend wise, I'd say I've had like an 80% Epstein friendship. And looking back at the faces of people inserted in my life for me to date, I've probably dated like 80% Rothschild Epstein bloodlines. And traveling across the nation here, I noticed first thing when I started going to other cities that they don't just own the media and the banks and science and Christianity and Satanism and and but I noticed I started going into like stores like Guitar Center and stuff like that, and they would be like the person running the place, and I'm like, damn, they don't just own the media and the banks and every in Hollywood, and every band in Hollywood has to have one of them in it at the very least. If it's not just them, like Drake is them, Drake is Epstein, and all that stuff. Make it up as Epstein, and of course, bunch of people Metallica have curly hair, and I mean the fact that they're simply in Hollywood says they're Weinstein, because Weinstein approved. But there's always seen there's always one in every band. It's odd because I was using some means to slow down the world around me, to move through the world faster, when I noticed this first. However you want to look at it, the same effect occurred. I was studying the world as time slowed down, and I was like getting this odd feeling. I was like, wait a minute, there's like, it's almost like that one person in the band there is controlling the entire band, and every other human is just like the humans are just like flesh puppets or something they control. And like, that's a dumb idea. Like, why are you thinking that? Then I did that again, and I was like, I'm definitely like getting this vibe that that's really freaking happening. And that could answer a lot of stuff. That's why it seemed to be why every human does exactly what they say to do and can't ever talk about anything else. Well, it took me a while to be able to identify them, and I suppose if all that information's been erased off the internet, then no one's gonna be able to identify them again until we destroy all technology. But like, how does that work? How does how do I travel 3,000 miles plus, and the first thing I begin to notice is there's like a Rothschild and Epstein with every group of people. And I noticed it like the 2,500-mile mark. I went into a store, and there's like three little black girls with like this old Epstein around them, and I'm like, why isn't Epstein hanging out with some little black girls? I mean, I really didn't. At that point in time, I felt like I was some sort of educated on the world around me. I was like, why is there an Epstein hanging out with like 3 8-year-old black girls or something? Like, yeah, maybe it's their babysitter, maybe it's their great uncle or something. Maybe it's just how Epstein works, hanging out with 3 8-year-olds. But really, I started looking into that because of my own life. And I began to look back at everyone who was in my life. And they're all Epsteins, but the Epsteins are only 2% of the population or less, right? We don't know for sure because when you check off race on a form, there is no different, box for different species. And the Epstein race, the Epstein species isn't listed under race either. So we don't know the true stats. Not that we could trust any stats because it would be the Epstein, NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox News, Zuckerberg, Wachowski, Google, Facebook stats. It'd just be whatever they say it is, right? And it'd be the Epstein USA government telling us which stats are correct and not, and it'd be the Epstein-ishal, the judicial system, telling us what we're allowed to speak of, especially if you're in Germany, because that's illegal to be anti-Epstein in Germany. Many other nations, I think, too, right? Germany was just one they had to genocide off, according to the fables. Because they became Epstein aware, according to the fables. They became Epstein aware, but somehow Epstein controls the nation even more after that. The world even more after that. So how does that happen? I look back at the people I dated, and really I can only think there's a couple people who weren't Epstein bloodline sent to date me. And generally I never choose anyone to date. The people I choose generally don't like me back. So it's whoever they allow, whoever this world allows to be inserted in my life. So I was like reviewing all my girlfriends, and I wasn't surprised by what I found. They all had dark hair and looked Epsteinish, obese, or in some sort of way deformed, like the planet is hostile to their healthy development. And then I looked at the couple people who didn't look like Epstein, and I was like, I looked at the relationship and the things that surrounded that person involving me, and there was like Epstein's inserted around us. In fact, the two who I think possibly may not have been, out of the so many I can remember, that three, I guess all three of those claim to be not, but the third I just assumed was. But they were surrounded by Epstein as well, and they also had like Illuminati tattoos on them. So why were they just like branded slaves or something? The at least the third one, and the third one had brown hair too, so I might as well rule them out as possible Epstein from that. But they had the Illuminati tattoos on them. They claimed they didn't know what that was, even though when they had the tattoo done, they threw up the Epstein official sign beside the tattoo. They claimed they didn't know what any of that meant. Again, what is it? Just like a flesh puppet unable to think for itself? And looking back at the first one, really the only one I really dated and liked. Only that person who had no links I can remember besides I've seen a picture of their father. Kind of like Yahweh, Zeus, it's all Epstein religions, right? Paganism, Christianity. Their gods are all Epstein. And that person now, has bred with an Epstein. And so if they weren't Epstein before, they are now. Now it's like a theme I was seeing a lot of and trying to like figure out. Obviously, kind of like at the start of 2020, I went to some Republican events, and then I went to some liberal Black Lives Matter events, and the purpose was to document the event, much like they did on 9/11, right? They were just there to document the event. And so I was there to document the events, and obviously, what I found through my documentation was that the Epsteins are in the key leading positions of Black Lives Matter and the Republican events. It's like Trump led the resurrection recently, and his Kushner family it's all, Kushner, Epstein, Einstein. That's all the same. So, Donald Trump led Epstein led the rebellion and overthrew the Capitol, as well as, the Black Lives Matter. And then obviously when I came out to Portland, we already knew who Antifa was. So I was not surprised that there was like not a single non-Epstein in sight. I mean, it was like kind of surprising because there were so many Epsteins there. And it was weird to see them all like armored up in armor and stuff like that. But how many Epsteins are in your life? If you don't look in the mirror and see an Epstein, then who is your wife? Who is your boyfriend? Who are your close friends? And why is this? Are the humans incapable of sentience? Are they just like, little flesh puppet visions, holograms or something? And they have to have, their puppet master beside them at all times, or they fail to function correctly. How does that work? I guess looking back at my male friends, I kind of see the same pattern too. The only person who I think who didn't look very Epstein was German. And that person was into anti-Epstein stuff when we were a kid. I didn't understand it back then, and no one ever really explained it to me. So I just thought he was a wild and crazy kid going around beating up people for no reason. And maybe he did that too, because I don't know how much education is actually in that hard right stuff, considering it's led by Epstein's like Trumpstein. So how is that? And let me know in the comments. If you look in the mirror and you look at your 3 best friends, you look at your spouse, your partner, your mother, your father, do you see a 2% ratio of Epstein? Or do you see something much higher than that? Let me know in the comments.